If you're new to sparring, or if you've seen yourself plateau in your sparring skill, this is a good video for you. Now, they say practice makes perfect, but that's not really true, is it? No doubt you've watched lots of people practice regularly and not get much better. Likewise, you may have yourself experienced a plateau, but you're still practicing all the time. So obviously, practice in itself does not make perfect. The truth is, only perfect practice can make perfect. And that's going to look a very specific way when it comes to Taekwondo sparring. Now, there are 4 principles you can apply to your practice that will make you an expert significantly faster than someone who doesn't apply these principles. These are timeless principles that have been used since the beginning of civilization by the expert class. Now, I found these in another YouTube video, actually, and I will link that in our description, but I'm going to apply them specifically to Taekwondo, and they'll make perfect sense once you hear them. Okay, 4 principles. Number 1, you need a predictable environment. Now, in Taekwondo, we have that with sport Taekwondo sparring because there are rules, there are boundaries set up on the game. If anything could happen inside of a Taekwondo match, it would be too unpredictable, and thus you wouldn't be able to develop skill in it because it would be different every time. As an example, if one day you practiced fencing, and then the next day jiu-jitsu, and then the next day wrestling, and the next day boxing, and then Taekwondo sparring, and on and on and on, you wouldn't be able to begin to recognize any of the patterns that are reoccurring because it would be totally different every time. So if there weren't any rules and limitations, you wouldn't have the ability to have this predictable environment that you can expose yourself to, which leads me to number 2, which is repeat exposure. The more exposure you get to this environment is going to be critical to your progress. So obviously, if you only spar once a year, you won't get any better at sparring. Now, here's what's interesting to me. If you spar every single day, you may run into situations where you burn your body out. So someone looking to get better wants to maximize their exposure to the environment without experiencing the burnout, the physical burnout that comes along with that. Now, there are lots of great drills that mimic the environment of sparring, but don't come with the negative health consequences of overexerting yourself or taking too many hard hits. And one of the goals I've got is to put together a course right now that's going to go over these drills that give you as much repeat exposure as you can get with no negative health consequences. And that's going to give you more experience than someone who's only sparring because there's only so much of that you can take. So my course will be specifically on developing reflexes that you can only earn through exposure to sparring without actually getting damaged by constantly sparring. Now, number 3 is that you need quick and timely feedback. So, of course, here is where a coach is going to come in handy because they can tell you what went wrong if you lost a match. They can also tell you what went right. Now, the nice thing is, if you don't have a coach, the game itself will often give you the answer. In the case of Taekwondo, you know something works if it scores, or if you win a match. And you know something doesn't work if you lost or got scored on. So with a little bit of critical thinking, you can often gain your own sense of timely feedback. It can be really helpful, for example, to record your sparring matches, both in competition or just in class, to gain insight on what exactly it is you're doing wrong. Often, you'll be able to identify those things yourself even if you don't have a coach doing it for you. Now, number 4 is that you need to practice deliberately. This one is just so key, and I think this is where people miss out the most. Now, in the case of sparring, it's going to look like constantly training outside of your comfort zone, basically finding people who are better than you to spar with. This can be really tricky, especially since it tends to be a small group of people that you work with to spar. If you are a bigger person, or if you're just naturally talented, you might get to the top pretty quickly. So then what do? You have to travel to seek out sparring partners. Now, the other thing you can do to train outside of your comfort zone is find techniques that you think would be valuable to know that you're not very good at yet, and limit yourself to those techniques when you spar people that under normal conditions you could beat. Putting limitations on yourself like this will allow you to continue to grow in areas that you weren't very talented before, because you're taking your best tools out of the toolbox. Deliberate practice means, generally speaking, training outside of your comfort zone. So any way you can find to just take it a little bit further, that is how you're going to see progress. Just generally speaking, it's the student who is always trying to kick the target that much faster, that much harder, who's always trying to have that much more endurance. Those are the ones who see progress. People who just show up and go through the motions, they're the ones who look the same as they did a year ago. They don't really get any better. Just as if I went to the gym and put a certain amount of weight on the machines, just did that amount, sure, at first I might get sore, but if I did the same thing every single time, after a certain point I would plateau. That's fine if I'm just trying to maintain something, but if you're actually looking to see progress, you have to always try to amp it up that much more. And that means constantly being at least a little bit outside of your comfort zone. Now, you can take these principles and apply them to any part of your Taekwondo training. Again, these are principles that I had not come up with myself, and I will link that video in the description for you. But I'm going to again be putting out this new course that will go through lots of different drills that you can use to gain the reflexes you need for good sparring really, really quickly, because you're not actually putting yourself in the rigorous conditions that you would see in a full-blown match. I've watched my own students excel tremendously, including myself, using these benefits, or using these methods, I should say. These methods were brought to our school here, my school, by my friend who spent 4 years training with one of the Olympic coaches down in Miami, Florida. And they are, as I said, game changers. So I will look forward to sharing those with you guys. What are some ways that you can train deliberately starting today? Let me know. Drop it down in the comments. I am looking forward to hearing from you. As always, thank you for joining me on the journey. Keep training.